One of the great features that VideoStudio has within VideoStudio Ultimate is Boris Graffiti. Boris Graffiti is a really cool, I must say, compositing tool that you can use if you're a more advanced user and you want to incorporate more 3D and 2D effects such as tumbling and spinning around a cylinder and doing some really wild titles and graphics compositing. Now, the background of Boris is that this software was initially written a number of years ago to be used in the broadcast and professional post-production markets. So a lot of what you see on television, a lot of the post work that you'll see is done by Boris. So what they've did over the last couple of years is introduced a product that is geared more towards the casual video editor, but still offering quite a bit of power in the way it works. So I'm going to show you how to use Boris from an introduction. There are other tutorials that will be available to get a little bit more detail on some of the things that Graffiti can do and more advanced animations that you can do. But let's start off with some really basic ones, and you'll see very quickly that even the basic use of Boris Graffiti can give you some really dazzling results. The first way to use it, and obviously because this is a filter, you can drag it onto a video clip. So let me just grab a video clip and just drop it into the timeline. And let me just zoom out here, and I'm going to collapse it down to be short. Now, when I add an effect to a clip, any one of these effects, that effect is clip-based. So the clip here, in this case, starts here at the beginning, and it goes to 323 at the end. So if I add an effect to this clip, it's going to go onto the whole clip. Certainly I have keyframes where I can turn the effect and change the effect over time, but basically the effect is on top of the full clip. So in this case, I'm going to take Boris and I'm just going to dump it onto the clip itself. So now the Boris Graffiti effect is on this full duration of this video clip. If I double click on the clip, you'll notice now that I have a customized filter, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to customize it, and Boris comes up with some default movements that you can use. For instance, in this case here, I have drop down. It gives you a little preview in this thumbnail. I can go over here and see what it's going to look like using this green arrow, green play arrow, to see what it looks like on my clip. Okay, looks all right. Now if I want to change the text on that, I just go down into the text entry box, and I'm going to say VideoStudio, and then I'm going to say apply this text above using this button here, apply it to the effect, and then I hit play, and there I have VideoStudio. The nice thing about Boris is that the movements are very, very nice. They have ease in to give you a smooth ease in and a smooth ease out. So there is very simple default using this blue text, put in my own text, and then what you want to do is hit apply. Once it's applied, you can now play through your project, and there it comes in. Very, very nice. Now say, for instance, you want to change some more parameters within this text in addition to the actual default. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. Now, the first way is a technique that I always use. I rarely put a Boris Graffiti effect directly onto a video clip. It's not really necessary to do. What I would do is I make a kind of, you could say, a garbage clip in an overlay track and add the effect to that and overlay it over my video. In that way I can control duration without changing the clip. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete the effect off this clip, and you'll see I just double click. There's Graffiti. I'll delete that one. The first thing I do then to do this, step one, is to go into my graphic tab and grab say a black clip, black color swatch. And there's my black color swatch. If you use VideoStudio, you're used to it showing up in the overlay track over top of this. And there's a couple of things I want to do to this before I add a Graffiti effect. First thing is I want it to be full screen. So let me just double click on this, and the attribute panel opens. I will go to alignment options, and I'm going to say fit to screen. So now the black is overlaid over top of my clip, fitting to screen. Okay, so it's my video clip, and then it goes to black here. The next thing I want to do is, because I'm going to use this clip as an overlay, as a mask over top of my video, I want to go into the mask options. So I go to mask and chroma key, and I say apply the overlay options. And the mask that I want to use is a full screen mask. When you get more advanced, you can use a number of these masks, these different styles of masks for your effect. You can also make your own mask in Paint Shop Pro or Photoshop or whatever paint program you have. You can make your own mask and make your own shapes and styles. So in this case here, I'm going to use a very, very basic mask. I'm going to say I'm not going to use a special visual effect like one of these. I'm going to use just a full screen mask. And we do have one here, this full screen mask right here. So I'll say I'm going to use that mask frame. So now I have a clip that has a mask that's full screen, and I'm going to go and add a Boris Graffiti effect. So first thing I do is I go to Boris Effect and I drag it onto this clip here, and I double click. The attribute panel opens again. There's my effect, and I'm going to say Customize. Now again, you saw the defaults, right? Okay, so let's just pick a default that I want to use. Say drop down, this drop down default. I'm going to use that one. I'm going to play that and see if that's the one I want. Yep, that's the one I want. Now, rather than applying and changing the text here, I'm going to jump into the advanced mode where you can do more work. Now, you click on the key, and now it opens up Graffiti. And you're going to say to yourself, holy cow, there's a lot of UI. But once you get used to it, this is second nature. Let me just go through the UI in different ways here. Here we have the composite window. This is a preview. If you use your center button on your mouse, you can zoom in, zoom out. There are play controls and this sort of thing. So let me just play this one and stop. And I can still zoom in, zoom out. And I hit play, and there's my preview window. This is all preview. This is where you're going to see everything, right in this area here. Down below it, we have the text window. There's no text in here right now, but you see text on screen here. See, how do you see that text? The way to do that is Boris is set up as objects. All objects can be animated. Now these objects can be text, can be graphics, can be vector art, whatever you like. So the objects all display themselves inside of this timeline mode. It says drop down. You'll notice right here, there's an object called drop down, which is the text. If I click on that and select it, all of a sudden my UI changes a bit. I've got this selected here. I have the attributes of this object right here. So regardless of what object you put down here, you have the attributes up here. So you can see there's a significant number of attributes and some beautiful effects. The motion blur within Boris is phenomenal when you start getting into motion blur. Very, very nice. So you have these tool sets that you can use, adding text and graphics. But in the basic sense, here I'm going to do just a basic title that has pre-canned. I'm starting with a default. Here we have this drop down. And I have it selected inside of my object tree right here. Now, if I go over here to the text window, you'll notice, hey, there it is. I've selected drop down. There's drop down. And there it is selected on the screen. If I click off of this, everything disappears because it's not selected anymore. Okay? So I go to drop down again, and there, everything's selected yet again. So now I can go in here and change things. And I'll say, for instance, VideoStudio. There we go, VideoStudio. And to see it in the screen here, I just say update if you like. Or you can go in here and change some additional parameters. This is typical text editing. So I'll go in here and say select VideoStudio, and instead of Arial, I'm going to use Arctic font. It says Arctic font there. Then I can go, or Antic rather, I'm sorry, Antic font. I can go in here and change point size, so there's point size there as well. And I'll say update. There you go. Okay, I can change the color if I like. So as I go down through here, you'll notice there's a lot of tools. There's skew tools, there's kerning, there's leading, there's spacing, there's bold, italic, all the text tools that you need. If I go to the next tab here, there is a word wrap capability. So if you have Star Wars scrolling text, okay, you would have it in here, and you could say turn the word wrap on. I don't have that, so I just have the single title. I can go in here and say what kind of a fill do I want? And in this case, it's a text fill is color. The color I want to use is not that color. I'm going to use a sort of a deep blue. And there you go, there's a deep blue. I can also use a gradient as a color. You know, I can use a gradient between that. And so there's a gradient. Maybe I'll use that. I'll say update. There's a neat looking gradient. Right? Okay. Keeping the tools, the text selected. You also have edge controls. For instance, I can turn an edge on. Right? So there's a white edge. And if I say update, there's a white, there's the, or rather a black edge. I'll have a black edge, but no, that's a little bit over the top, so I'm not going to do that. Update again, there it is. I can go down here and have drop shadows, for instance. I can drop a shadow onto these things, and you'll notice there's a drop shadow, a very subtle one. All right? So there you have a very simple title showing you on screen here. Now, if I go to play this, let me just go back to the beginning using these controls here. I can go and play this, and there you have it. Very simple title. So I'm not going to go into all the different effects that you can do, but here I wanted to show you how to make a simple title for VideoStudio, changing the font capabilities, changing the font size, and sort of giving you an overview of the UI. One step remains before we put it into VideoStudio to overlay your video clip. Just one step. As I mentioned earlier, all the objects are on this panel here. The VideoStudio text is right here, and there's a thing called background. Now, background. The background is what you want this to be. In this case here, it is solid. You saw it when I left VideoStudio. It was a solid black background. I don't want that black background to be like that. I want this to be over video. To put it over video, you have to make a thing called an alpha channel. You have to enable an alpha channel. In this case, and alpha means transparency. In this case, when I click on background in the object panel here, when I click on background, and you'll do this every time. When I click on background, I go to invert alpha. There you go. Now you see the familiar checkerboard pattern, which means that is the transparent area of this title, of this graphic effect. One thing you'll notice with Boris is the anti-aliasing, the edges, the diagonal edges, the pixel-based stuff. It looks gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Once you're done that, you're set to put it into your project. I click on my object panel, my timeline panel here, and there's a button called Apply. Now, if I scrub through in VideoStudio, I can go in here and have this wonderful, wonderful title. You will find the quality of Boris Graffiti absolutely second to none. One added trick that you can do is to be able to save this effect. Now, for instance, say you really like what you did in Graffiti. You really, really like it, and you want to use this in the future again. And also the steps that I showed you in terms of setting up the mask and all of that. You don't need to do that every time. You can just do that once. This first time on this tutorial is what I'll do. So what you can do is you can drag this back into your library. So considering that this is a color clip with an effect on it, I can actually drag this back into the library right here, and then I have a copy of that particular piece. So I can drag it back into the timeline at a future time, and here you can see that the effect is still there. So this allows you to save an effect on a color clip. You can do this reverting back to your library at any time with any component. So here what I'll do is I'll just name this one, and I'm going to say Graffiti Blue Text. So now what you can do is just keep using this in the future. You boot up VideoStudio on another production, you want to use the same look and feel. Very, very easy. Just drag this back in the timeline, double click on it, customize that filter, jump into the keyframer, and here you have the VideoStudio again. I can go in here and say change the clip for the future, change it to some other name. I'll say update that, then I'll say apply, and I'm back. So that same clip is now being used in a different context. So you can keep using that by dragging it back into the library and being able to reuse it in the future. So there you have it, the color clip, Graffiti Blue Text. So have fun with Graffiti. I think that once, after a brief period of learning it, you're going to find that it has power that is wonderful, and the quality that outputs from Graffiti on your VideoStudio projects will really make you look great.